Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. So if you haven't done this already and signed up to our PEP list to receive a recap email about this week's shows, make sure you head over to performancepodcasts.com. That's podcasts with an S at the end. When you do that, you can even pick up 6 hours of subliminal training. That means now you can basically work on things like speed reading, memory enhancement, and even how to be more decisive just through subliminal messaging. So make sure you do that. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to our show via iTunes, you can do that at performancepodcasts.com/iTunes. Or if you prefer to use Stitcher, you can do that too at performancepodcast.com/Stitcher. And remember, we have new episodes coming out every Monday and Thursday morning. So make sure you stay on top of that. Lastly, if you want to keep up with everything Satori Prime, you can always head over to our main site, satoriprime.com, and roam around. We have a ton of free content that we constantly update. And if any of you are actually looking for some mentorship around your marketing efforts, specifically on how to use Facebook paid marketing to double, triple, or even quadruple your business, then we have a couple of masterminds that we run that can absolutely transform your marketing efforts in just 90 days. So make sure you take an application for that at satoriprime.com/mastermind. And with that, my friend, let's kick off today's show. So if you haven't heard part one, Ryan, Moran, and I basically jammed about some pretty crazy things that have been going on in our lives, I guess, in the last 5 weeks. I thought Ryan was super honest and raw and real with us and really shared some hardships that he's dealing with. And we actually came up with an unbelievable, let's call it 4.5-step process on how important it is to get out of that and what you can follow, like this 4.5-step process to actually get out of situations. And when you want to lock yourself up in your room and just cry, how do you get out of that? So we looked at that. Now, today's part two is more about business, which Ryan obviously is very gifted at, because Ryan is going through something right now which he's never done before, and I've never actually experienced, which is selling a business. So he's in that process. So we really delve into what does that process look like? How do you set up a business that even has the opportunity to be sold? And what are the things that you look for when you're actually trying to sell the business? And then we wrap up with another great mindset wrap up about just kind of everything that we've been going through. So enjoy my chat with Ryan Moran, and we'll talk real soon. Because I know you're going through something right now where you're selling your first business, right?
I'm selling a business. It's not my first business, but I'm selling one of my businesses.
But this is is this the first time you're selling a business?
Oh, yes. This is yes.
That's what
correct.
Okay. So I've never done that. And I'm just curious personally, like, what is that process like? How did that come to be?
The most interesting thing is there's processes that I've learned that I'll cover more later is realizing what you have to have in place to sell a business.
Okay.
But the way that it came about was I have a business that met that criteria of basically being set up in a way that was attractive to be sold.
Did you start it with the notion that you were going to sell it someday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the way that it came about from a sales perspective was someone saw me speak at a conference.
Okay.
We had a couple of lunches together. They happened to be basically a capital group that buys companies and builds them and grows them, which is something that I love the idea of. That I've always kind of dreamed of that being my ideal business, if you will, was having a capital group that buys a bunch of companies and then eventually buys the Cleveland Indians. And these conversations became, is there a potential for us to work together? Is there a way that we can bring our energies together. And then it came down to, well, you have this business that actually meets our criteria. We'd actually like to talk about that.
Huh.
And so that led to another conversation of, okay, can we actually work together and create a win-win situation out of this business at the same time? It would be a really interesting test to see if we could work together. And then negotiations happen, and then contingency plans happen, and then lawyers get involved. And all of a sudden you come to an agreement and you go, this looks good for me. This looks good for you. We don't know what's going to happen as far as our working relationship later, but we agree to these terms. Hey buddy, I think we just sold a business is kind of how it happens. So it's not a process, at least it wasn't for me, of you go out with the intention of selling, you find a buyer, you advertise it for sale, you sell a business and make millions of dollars. That was not my experience. My experience was we eventually wanted to sell. We knew that certain opportunities came up. The right person presented themselves, and then we sold at the time that we least expected to sell. Wow. So it was not how I thought it was going to happen. There's the mantra for today. It was not how I thought it was going to happen, but it happened in a way that was beneficial at the time that the opportunity presented itself. And we were totally fine keeping the business, but the opportunity came up. The right person came along as a result of seeing me speak, diving into my business, and we sold the business, or are selling the business. We're still going through a bunch of paperwork.
That's amazing. When you start to build that kind of business with the intention to sell it, what are some things that you're looking at? Because like Satori Prime is a passion-based business. It's me. Like, yeah, it was never built with the intention to sell. Nor could it ever be sold. I don't think, at least not the way that it's designed now. So what are some of the things that you have to do when you're building a business from the ground up with the intention, like in 3, 4, 5, whatever years, I'm going to sell this business?
It's funny. I'm having a conversation with myself, and I was going to say you have to be able. What I was going to say was that your face can't be on the business. That's actually not true. The truth is you have to have systems that operate whether you are the face of it or not. That's the real answer. It makes it a lot easier if you're not the face of it. This is a yoga company. So watch me try to do a yoga pose and you will see why I am not the company. So there is no face of the company. It's a physical products business that sells mats and blocks and towels. So that type of a business is easier to systemize than a business like you and I have that has our face all over it and we blog and we do these podcasts.
Yeah.
You can't, that's hard to sell because the only person that's going to buy it is us or maybe our mom, right? Who's going to buy this business? But a yoga business that is pretty easy to automate and has no face on it is a pretty easy and attractive thing to sell. And the reason for that is the question of, is it duplicable? Can we duplicate what is in place? If I am bought out of a business, it's difficult, not impossible, to bring somebody onto my podcast, Freedom Fastlane, and keep doing the content and keep the audience engaged. It's dependent upon me. Whereas if I exit from Zen Active Sports, can you still sell the exact same yoga mat? Of course. So I wanted to say that it can't have your face on it, but the truth is, that's what is important to a prospective buyer.
Say that last line because you cut out. You said the truth is?
The truth is you have to have systems in place that operate without you because that is what is attractive to a potential buyer.
Got it. Okay. What was one of the unexpected things that happened during this process that you just went, damn, I didn't realize that when you sell a business like this, I have to deal with this?
I think the most interesting thing was the different types of buyout structures that I did not expect to be presented with. Because the way I saw it was you sell a business, you get a whole bunch of money, and then you buy the Cleveland Indians. That's what you do. Whereas that was not the That's what everybody would do if they sold a business, right? Buy a baseball team. But for me, it wasn't that at all. It was presented with several different options for buying the business, and they looked like this: 100% buyout, cash upfront. There's a partial buyout. Then there's a full buyout with terms, meaning the payments come over time. There's a buy and rehire, meaning you get a little bit of cash up front, but then they hire you as a member of the company and you continue running it. There's the buy and you piece out. There's the you just get a little bit up front, but then you continue to operate the company, but you get more salary. There's a bunch of different structures that are possible, and I only had one frame of mind. The thing that allowed us, or that basically sold me on selling the business, because the evaluation that we got was much lower than what we expected to sell for eventually.
Okay.
And what we got was what we got presented to us was less than we would have liked, obviously, to sell the business for. Everybody wants to sell it for more. But the thing that sold me on it was the fact that we were selling to a company that had more cash, resources, connections, employees, systems, and track record than my partner and I would ever have doing it ourselves. And we got to keep a significant amount of the equity of the company, while our involvement got to be not quite zero, but close to zero. So we got to basically pass off this business and get cash from it and do it in a way where eventually the amount of net worth that we're going to have from this company is probably going to outweigh anything that he and I could have built on our own.
I see.
So we get cash now, and it's nice. It's a low to fair valuation of the company that we were comfortable with, plus some terms. But we also get the fact that this is probably going to grow into something much bigger, and the amount of equity that we keep is probably going to be worth more than had we just held on to it ourselves, which I think is how Instagram's buyout from Facebook worked. Was everybody was like, wow, it's $1.6 billion or whatever it was, but it was all stock, meaning that Instagram knew that if they sold to Facebook, their equity would be worth far more than what they could do on their own. We did the exact same thing, but I, for some reason, didn't even think that I didn't calculate that was an option when selling a business. I had seen it as they buy you out, you go away, you build the next business. But this was, we sold the majority of our company, held on to some of it, and through working with our team are going to grow into something much bigger. Plus we have this cash up front. So it wasn't what we expected, but it's going to be great.
Do you need to now sit on as a consulting thing, or you're kind of hands off?
Yeah, I'll be a consultant for them for a year, which basically means that Sean, my partner, and I go out to breakfast once a week, talk about what we want the company to do next, and then send it off to the people that are going to be implementing. Whereas before, we would do that over breakfast and then spend the week implementing everything. That doesn't exist for us anymore. We talk about what we want the business to do, pass it off to somebody else, and that's our consulting, if you will. And our payout for that is going to be more than what we were paying ourselves. So these are all the different factors that calculate into selling a business. It wasn't as much of a clean break as I thought it was going to be.
So it's interesting because our, the issue that we kind of dealt with is kind of similar, where not in a buyout, like we're not selling, but we have a product, which is a Facebook Mastermind product. And one of the companies that we train for basically wants to bring that product in-house. Okay. They want to start selling it in-house. Now, in order for them to sell it in-house means that Guy and I on the actual product are going to make less money, because there are different people in that company that, now need to be accounted for, where before it was just us. Okay. So the thing that we've kind of struggled with once we got past like all the shitstorm that was like the issue, is now coming at it from a financial standpoint. And I'm curious what your take on it would be. So their argument is that by bringing this product in-house, they have systems in place that will allow us to drive way more traffic and, in essence, higher conversions to the actual offering. So even though we're going to make less per customer, quote unquote, in the reality of things, because of the systems and all that stuff, we should be making triple what we're doing now, just by sheer volume. Is that a calculation that you guys took into account? Is that something that you know going in as you give this up, that you're going to make less on a piece by piece basis, but as a whole, is that one of the decisions you guys looked at?
Yeah, 100%. The only thing different from that was that we got some cash up front as well. So we sold the asset of our business, which is the brand and the stream of cash flow, the sales channel. We sold that, we got cash up front. But the thing that finally, we wouldn't have said yes if it was 100% buyout based on these terms. The number was too low. But what sold us on it was the fact that we were selling a majority of the business, but we got to keep equity in something that was going to end up being far bigger than what we did. So we'll do some numbers just for example.
Yeah.
So if that business does 50 sales a day, and we can hold on to that and grow it over time, we have this idea, maybe we'll be able to build this up to 100 or 200 sales a day, maybe, right?
Okay.
But the reality is we're selling 50 units a day. We're just playing with these numbers, okay? And that brings in a certain amount of money.
Okay.
That's what we can do with the resources that we have available to us right now. By selling off the majority of the business and selling off the systems and the channels to a business that is going to, it has 50 employees with us, which is 2 and, 1 part-time person.
Yeah.
Let's say that we're betting on the fact that they can grow the business from 50 to that 200 very quickly, with the idea of maybe it'll do 1,000 a day.
I got you.
And now our percentage of that is higher than what we ever dreamed of it being on our own. So it's similar to you. If you think that by changing these systems and this company taking it all in house, they're able to generate more revenue for you than you could do under the existing systems, then it's a great trade. For us, we had that risk mitigated by the fact that we're getting some cash up front.
Got it. Now, would you do some sort of calculation on the fact of what would kind of be your break-even number based on the new? So you guys are making some sort of percentage of the company as a whole now, right?
Yeah.
Do you have some sort of break-even number that you calculated? Okay, we're selling 50, so here's our number that we're making. In order for this to make sense with the new company, we would need to sell at least X, and that would put us kind of at that same number.
We did something similar, which was we calculated everything based on what's happening today.
Okay.
And we said, okay, what would make us happy? What do we think would be a fair valuation, a fair trade for what we're doing right now? And is that what we're getting as far as cash up front in terms?
Okay.
This piece of equity that we're holding on to is going to be gravy on that. That is going to probably be the differentiating factor of if we look back 5 years from now and say, well, we're really glad that, or maybe it wasn't the best deal. That's kind of the mystery piece of it. And because it's a mystery, we calculated what we felt was a fair valuation today. What do we feel good about if we take this cash and it goes to hell, the mystery piece goes down? Are we still happy with this transaction? And we made that valuation. We took that estimation into our decision of if we were going to take the deal or not, because we couldn't calculate what was going to happen to that mystery piece.
Yeah, makes sense.
So all of our evaluation on do we move forward with this, because we were very happy moving on with the business and growing it ourselves. But we looked at it as, if we sold today and the mystery piece did not work out, are we happy with the terms that we're getting right now? And when the answer was yes, and we had to negotiate to get it to the point to where we were comfortable with that, that's when we said, okay, great, we can move forward with this, because the mystery piece doesn't matter anymore.
Got it.
But its potential is way higher than what it would be if we keep doing what we're doing. So we got something we're happy with up front and a much greater potential, even though that potential might not work out. We're all operating with potential, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're operating on the potential that Facebook doesn't go out of business and
Correct.
iTunes doesn't kick us off of podcasting tomorrow, right? Now, that potential always exists, but we're operating on what the potential is. So it was a matter of trading our existing potential, what we can control, to a much higher potential that we can't control as well. And the cost of trading that potential was what was being exchanged up front.
I see.
And when we were comfortable with making that trade, that's when we decided to move forward with the sell.
Gotcha. Okay. That actually gives me some good things to think about. That's awesome. All right, man. I think we covered a hell of a lot today. We'll be doing this again soon.
Wait, I got one more.
Okay, do one more.
Okay, I don't want to end this yet, because this was my big takeaway from everything, all the wackiness that's going on in my life.
Yeah.
And I have said this publicly before, but it became very, very real to me after experiencing something painful. And that is that all our brains know how to do is compare. That is how we are evaluating everything on a constant basis, unconsciously.
Yeah.
We are constantly comparing ourselves either in an empowering way or in a disempowering way.
Yeah.
So when I'm disappointed about the situation in my life, it is because I am comparing the reality to the idea in my brain.
Correct.
This does not exist. It's an idea.
Yeah.
The same is true with a reality show, right? I am comparing my projection, of what's going to happen compared to what is actually happening. The reality of this situation is that the show sucked and it got terrible ratings and it got canceled.
Yep.
That's the reality of the situation. So, but even that reality doesn't affect how I felt about the situation, because I was comparing it to the idea in my brain, not the reality. And as a result, I felt a certain way. The thing, okay, I'm getting all excited now.
I love when you get excited.
Do you know on a daily basis what kids in Africa have? Nothing.
No.
Do you know how happy kids in Africa are? Blissfully, incredibly stupid happy.
Wow.
So I have a friend who has helped build schools in Africa, and every time he comes back, he's like, you would not believe how happy these kids are. They're so grateful for everything. Do you know why? Because they have nothing else to compare to.
Yeah.
Now, that's not in like I'm not saying that as a negative thing. Like, how sad are they that they don't have anything to compare it to? They're stupid happy.
Yep.
Insanely, blissfully happy. And we have everything. We have more than any society has ever had. And depression meds are up. What we suffer about is up.
Yep.
We find shit to suffer about.
Yep.
That is what news is.
Yep.
News is there's nothing to be sad about today. So here's what happened. Here's what happened across the world, so you can keep feeling bad. And it gives us, we are constantly finding things to feel bad about because of the comparisons that we're making. Depression meds are up because Facebook use is up. That's why we're more depressed than ever, because we are constantly seeing a stream of what everybody's fucking happy about. Even though they're lying, right? We all know everybody's putting on a front.
Yeah. Well, it's their best face forward. Yeah.
And everybody's doing it. And yet, even though we know that's happening, we psychologically compare ourselves to what is being projected.
Yeah.
So my mentor has a mantra that I think is brilliant. He says, whenever I feel down, I just ask myself, who am I comparing myself to?
Great question.
Because when we're feeling down, it's because we're comparing ourselves to something that's disempowering. Whereas we control this game. We control all the time what we are comparing ourselves to. And I had an interesting thing happen to me when I was like at the peak of my suffering. I started comparing myself to different situations.
Huh.
And all of a sudden, mine didn't seem so bad anymore. I started comparing myself to other bad news people are getting.
Yeah.
I started comparing my situation to other things that might have happened had this not happened.
Wow.
I started comparing this to the experience that I would have if I continued operating under the idea of what my life would look like, and it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
I started comparing myself to all these different things and realizing my situation wasn't that bad. It actually had the potential to be something really, really great if I allowed myself to see that perspective. But the only comparison I was making was, what's my idea, which isn't real, and what am I experiencing right now? And that caused suffering. But we can flip the script anytime in a way that makes us feel empowered. And I knew this on a logical basis. But in practice, wow, does that get locked in? Wow, does that get locked in?
Well, also, look, pain, suffering, there's a biochemistry that happens. You cannot, when shit like that happens, that's why, step one is like, feel what you need to feel. You cannot operate at that pain level. Like, you just can't. Your brain is not there. It's literally a 7-year-old brain in an adult body. It just does not function. So you do have to go through that process. I really, really like that question. Who am I comparing myself to?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even someone else. It's, like you said, the idea of you, like your idealized version of yourself is what you're comparing yourself to. So look, at the end of the day, I always tell people, a guy and I wanted to start this course, and we were going to call the course Lie to Me, because at the end of the day, everything that we say in here in our brain, it's all made up.
Yeah.
There's just certain shit that you make up that empowers you to move forward, and there's certain shit that you make up that empowers you to go cry in your that disempowers you, makes you cry in your bed.
Yeah.
But you made it up. It doesn't matter. Like, I know it feels real, and people are like, "No, but this is how it is." I'm like, "No, you're choosing to believe like that's that."
100%.
So once you understand that it's not real, you can start making those little shifts. And again, it doesn't happen overnight, but it takes that kind of dedicated practice to be like, look, I don't want to feel this way anymore. One of the other things that we always tell people is, like, which we didn't really talk about today, is looking at the impact of if nothing changed. So like you were in that situation, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at the impact, if you didn't do anything, how is your life going to be? Like, if nothing changed from that moment, how is that going to impact your life? How is that going to impact the people around you, your loved ones, your family, your friends, etc.? And once you get like how impactful that is on yourself and others, it always gets people out, because they're like, oh my God, I don't want to be that shithead. Like, I don't want to be that kind of black death to the people around me. So I love what you said about the Africans, because I learned that. I was in Belize, and I remember us driving, and I saw these kids kicking like paper as a ball, elated. And then we're driving through this really like dirt, crazy ass road. And I see this guy from really far away carrying a massive, massive satchel on his back, like a huge, huge burlap sack. And as we get closer, I'm like, wow, this guy's actually really old. And I see that he doesn't even have shoes. He has basically like, I don't know, a piece of cardboard with like strings, right? And I'm like, oh my God, what a miserable thing. And the driver's like, yeah, this guy has to walk like 5 miles into town, and that bag is filled with corn, and that's what he brings back to his family, and he's got to do this like once every whatever. And I'm just thinking like, holy crap, what an awful existence, right? So, idiot me. So we're driving by, and I look back at this guy, smile ear to fucking ear. And I just remember going, I don't know shit about life. That was my thought. It wasn't like, wow, I'm blessed. Wow, I'm this. It was one of those things where it's like in my head, it was so clear that this guy's life is miserable, and he was elated. No headphones, literally walking with, I don't know, it must have been like 40 pounds on his back. And that was my moment. So I completely agree. I think a lot of it is perspective. And sometimes you can look at external perspective, but just realize that guy chose to be happy. right? We can decide whether his circumstances were good or bad or whatever, but he chose with that circumstance. He was ecstatic. He was like, I can't believe I'm privileged enough to carry this stuff, be healthy enough to bring this to my family. I don't know what he was thinking, but he was ecstatic. So who the fuck are we to say it should be this, it shouldn't be that? Just choose your life. Choose exactly how it is and exactly how it isn't, and be damn happy that that's the life that you get to lead. Like all the things that we experience, you know what? Amazing. Amazing. What a gift to experience the things that we experience, as painful as we might think they are. Oh, awesome.
Ilan, I want to tell you how much you are not like my old girlfriend. You see,
sorry, I almost choked on some water there.
This is what I was thinking as you were talking, is that you are so handsome.
Oh, thank you.
And you become even more handsome when you talk.
Thank you.
And in that way, you are so the opposite of my last girlfriend.
Can we just end it on that? Because that might be the line of the century.
Okay.
Ryan, I love these chats. By the way, guys, we spoke. We're going to do this like once every couple of months just to check in. And, again, I learned so much. I think we riff off each other amazingly well. So again, thank you so much for coming on our show. And for everyone else, tell them where they can check you out.
My podcast is called Freedom Fastlane. It's one of the top business podcasts on iTunes. My website is freedomfastlane.com, or you can just find me on iTunes. Make sure you subscribe to the show Freedom Fastlane.
Awesome. Ryan, my man, love you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you, buddy. All right.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to satoriprime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time. Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.